Now for a little bit more on the story, we're joined by the media writer at The Australian, Darren Davidson. Poised to pull the trigger, are they, Darren, if we get a bit of a jump off the back of an election result?
That's right. The train has finally left the station for the Nine IPO. This will be the biggest local IPO in the Australian market for almost 5 years. We reported online yesterday at The Australian that 3 banks have been appointed. And as you said there, you've named some of the bankers. There's also Peter Brownie, the Managing Director of Morgan Stanley. He's also involved, and Morgan Stanley will also be working on the retail component. It looks like, in terms of timing, this could happen before Christmas. It's understood that Nine shareholders are eyeing a boost in business confidence on the back of the expected change in government that we'll have in September. And they'll look to raise between $500 million and $1 billion. What they might do is look to pay down some of that debt that they've built up following the acquisition of Wind Corporation's Adelaide and Perth TV stations. And the hedge fund owners, Apollo and Oaktree, who bought in during that very public and high-profile refi of Nine almost a year ago, might look to actually pay down some of their stake. They own about 95.5% of Nine following that recapitalisation. So with debt cheap at the moment on global markets and the stock market still quite buoyant, and an expected business boost in confidence after the federal election, it looks like this might now happen November or December.
And so, I was just wondering, so are those hedge funds, are they keeping some kind of stake in Nine then?
It's hard to say. I don't think they've actually made a call on this yet. My money is on them actually selling down some of their stake. They bought in above parity with the dollar, and obviously that's fallen since then. And for other reasons as well, I think they might look to sell down and reduce their exposure. And the other thing is I think they'll also, they'll make a decision, and when they make that decision, they'll be looking quite closely at 7 West Media this Thursday when they report their full-year result, and Fairfax reports on the same day as well. And they'll be looking for some market guidance from 7, and they'll be very interested to see how their earnings are going. Nine's costs are very high. It's spent a lot of money on big franchises like Australia's Got Talent, and it's obviously paid a lot of money for the cricket, which it's currently trying to monetise at the moment as we prepare for the Australian Ashes series, which starts in November. So I think they'll probably almost certainly sell down some of that stake. How much, who knows? But I understand they haven't actually made a call yet.
It's a far cry from, as you say, about a year ago when Nine were up against the wall. You had high-level meetings. People thought they were going to go under. Then obviously the US hedge funds came in with 95%. And considering all that, I just wonder, despite maybe a jump in investor sentiment post an election, people have relatively long memories, particularly investors, when it comes to jumping on an IPO which has had such issues like Nine.
Yep, I think you're right. And I think what you're referencing there, and is still in the fresh of people's minds, is CVC, the private equity firm which famously owned Nine, having bought the network of James Packer, and then incrementally, through a series of sell-offs, lost billions of dollars, the biggest billion-dollar loss in the Asia-Pacific region. So that wasn't all that long ago, and nor was the refi, which became very public and high-profile back in October. But Nine is... what you could also argue is Nine is a different business to the business 12 months ago that Apollo and Oaktree bought into. It's now a pure play TV network. They've got the stations in Adelaide and Perth, which previously were only affiliate agreements with Bruce Gordon's Wind Corporation. They've sold ACP magazines, which was a drag on earnings, and they floated iSelect. They've sold off other bits and bobs, and they're more of a, they're a pure play TV proposition at the moment. And free-to-air is a very healthy part of the media sector in Australia, despite what people say about structural and cyclical changes and a fairly flat ad market. And it's quite protected by the government and the anti-siphoning regime. Some of the sports that you can get on pay TV in other countries like the UK, like the cricket, you can't get on pay TV over here. They have to be on free-to-air. Some of these top-tier sports, AFL, NRL, cricket, and tennis. So in that respect, it's maybe a more attractive proposition than it probably was 12 months ago.
Darren, also in your section today, the billionaire German magazine mogul Yvonne Bauer making quite a rare visit to Australia. Tongues are wagging about possible maybe acquisitions. What would she likely be eyeing while she's here?
Yeah, so we actually had an interview with Yvonne back in Feb. which I did for the Australian, and she said there she flagged up her intentions to actually invest. Since then, we've seen a lot of cost cutting at Bauer, and they've closed some of their less profitable magazines, and there's been redundancies as well. Based on what they're doing in the UK, and they're a German company, I think we're looking at radio and digital. And I think obviously leaping forward after the federal election, and we've talked about this before, we're going to see a lot of consolidation in the Australian media sector. There'll be changes to ownership laws. And I think she'll look to, and I think some of the radio companies in this market will be in play. Famously, Southern Cross have been linked with various mergers. There's other radio assets around the country. With Prime Media last week, the regional TV company that has an affiliate agreement with Kerry Stokes, Seven sold off some of its radio assets for about $25 million. So I think they'll look to buy some radio and digital assets. They're not really saying much more than that at the moment. And this is her second visit since she came out. The second visit this year anyway, since she came out for the first time in January, when she took a bit of a holiday as well and explored the country and got to know it a bit, and apparently really, really liked it and was quite keen to come back again.
Sure, it could just be a holiday.
Much as like the weather, actually.
Enjoy the summertime. Peter Meakin, big announcement for 10, I suppose a relatively big coup as well. What can we expect from Peter and this 10 move?
Yeah, so I caught up with Peter and Hamish on Friday, and as the news broke on the Australian's website, he's 71 now, and in the interview that we've got with him today, he kind of makes light of his veteran status. He talks about how Tom Waterhouse is currently taking bets on him not actually being around to actually start the contract once 7 allow him to start at 10. He's on a 6-month non-compete. He said, I'm not going to say, I'd be foolish, he said, to say too much about what I'm going to do, but we won't be doing what 7 and 9 do. We're going to bring a fresh approach to 10. They're clearly now going to attack the news and current affairs territory that's dominated by 7 and 9, and he's going to shake things up a bit and bring a bit more verve and a new approach to what they've been doing over there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see, maybe a flagship current affairs programme in the evening. He wouldn't say, but that's just my guess. And obviously they're shaking up the morning as well with Adam Boland, who's a very highly rated former 7 exec. So under Hamish McLennan, the new CEO, who only started over in March, he's managing to attract some really big talent and some serious heavyweight talent. And it's, I think, exciting times for 10. And I hear that the newsroom there is really pumped and really excited and looking forward to seeing Peter start when he does actually start.
Do you suspect the likes of 7 and 9 would be a little bit nervous, as you say, considering they've got mornings? Adam Boland, considered a bit of a mornings genius, and now Peter Meakin, I think it was 20 or 30 years with 9, a decade with 7, and was basically turned them into the leading news and current affairs within the sector. I mean, these are some heavyweights. Is it going to be enough to turn 10 around?
Well, who's to know? I think the thing about 10 is they wouldn't talk about a big giant turnaround tomorrow. I think what they talk about, and this is what's actually happening, it's probably been underreported in the last few weeks, they're on a kind of incremental, slowly, gradually build it back up, and that's what they're doing at the moment. And they've had some big ratings wins in the last couple of weeks. They had the 3rd highest programme on, I think it was last Wednesday night. They've actually beaten 9 in terms of share on a couple of evenings. So they're slowly, gradually building things back up. And they're probably 2 years away from a big, substantive ratings and revenue turnaround. But there's some really green shoots there for sure. And Hamish is certainly attracting some big names, some big talent. And Adam Boland and Peter Meakin are basically the best in the business at what they do. And I'm sure 7 and 9 are kind of nervously starting to look over their shoulders at the moment.
That wouldn't have anything to do with the 9 float, I suppose. Might feed into it at some point.
They're certainly keeping their eye on that, the other 2 networks, that's for sure.
Darren, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Darren Davidson there from the media section of The Australian.